Hey everybody, this is Petey from Spinner Rack, and today I'm doing a video on the relaunch of Superman, the reboot, and but it's gonna be a little different. Obviously, the relaunch had the first issue of Superman by Byrne and Austin, and called Kiesel would take over. Then we had Marv Wolfman and Jerry Ordway. And then we also had Byrne and Dick Giordano on Action Comics. Now, here at we're gonna focus on the Adventures of Superman, because the person that the people in the DC office always wanted to do the title was Jerry Ordway. Because Jerry Ordway has a classic style. He kind of pulled in a little bit of, what we saw Wally Wood doing. You see a little bit of Joe Shuster in them, So we have these classic styles in his thing. Maybe even a little bit of Kurt Swan's pacing, right? So, you had this person, who's pretty much, I think he came in, I know he was in around the time I was reading, I guess it's like 80, 81. He kind of got into the comic industry. He was doing the All-Star Squadron, which was one of my favorite titles, which he was inking and then he was drawing later. Then he did Infinity Inc., which I bought some of the issues, but I didn't stick with. And so he was kind of around the DC thing, and they wanted him to do it when initially Alan Moore was going to take over Action. And but obviously that didn't happen. So they, Marv Wolfman, who had pitched his idea, and one of the things he really wanted to do was get back to the Fleischer serials, and that was kind of his initial approach to it. And Luthor, which was I think it was Cal mentioned that it was similar to his Vandal Savage in the mid 80s run he did with Gil Kane. But I think the issues I remember with Randall Savage was done by Kurt Swan, right? So we're gonna stick to this one here, right? So Byrne took the lead. Obviously he did Man of Steel, and Adventures of Superman was by Marv. So he's taking what they call a second chair. But at the same time, the DC office, since Marv was kind of there's nothing really said, but they basically let Marv have a free hand, and ultimately enough, rope to hang himself with, because they kind of pushed him. Well, it was not renewed, and he didn't stay on the title after issue 135. Sorry, 435. Issue 435. So it's like 11, 12 issues, and I think they had Jim Starlin do the annual. Right, so you can see there was some differences where Byrne's Superman could survive a nuclear blast. He could lift mountains. He could lift planes. Stuff in the Adventures of Superman, it's kind of like he was fusing the TV Superman with the Fleischer superhero. So you had the Adventures of Superman with the Fleischers kind of put together. So when I first was doing this video, I read it the same way I kind of read the stories when I got them. Because I liked this. This one was fun. And this one I liked his art, and I liked the characterization in this story. There was a lot of good character bits in here, and decent cover. Not necessarily, I'm not, it's good, but I mean, you have sort of the worry about Superman if he's going to make it out alive here, and you have no need to get out of it. Yet this one where, he's already lost his mind. So here we start, and the Lane family is here with Lois and Lucy's mother. She's in bad shape. There was some sort of explosion in the chemical plant. Lois's father is kind of not nice to Lois. and they say this black cloud because obviously Lucy had her eyesight problem. So it's like a lot of heavy stuff going on in this first issue. And then we also have this meeting with this Gaddafi type. He's from Iraq. I didn't know he was introduced, but Iraq was introduced. Iraq was introduced in the Titans, so it's another Titans tie-in. But then we have this. Basically, we see the next cover. But here we see this UN building, consulate building that's in Metropolis get attacked, right? And we see it so powerful it topples the whole building. So it's going to show you him toppling the building being strong enough to take on Superman, right? So this, even though he did Superman dating, I believe, Lana, and them's kind of loosened, their relationship kind of going away. And Lois and Clark kind of getting, I can't remember what it was. I forget who was getting together. Maybe it was Lana and Superman, right? So here, Clark meets this new girl that's coming to the office, right? So this interaction is pretty decent. Only here, I've never seen an elevator that you couldn't press the little bit of bar in between the doors to get it to open again. But it gives you a cute sequence where they kind of fall together, and it lets you know that she's hot to death, and Clark is kind of taken with her, right? So they meet the new reporter. So he's doing a lot of characterization stuff in here, which is cool. I liked it. I liked a lot of this stuff, right? So I like Cat too. I like Cat a lot. And giving us someone else outside of, outside of Lana, who took on a different relationship. Because it kind of felt like since she was in Superboy, she was kind of struggling to compete with Lois, since obviously Lois was the person we met initially. And I think she got her, her light more so in the movie, in Superman 3. And then when the Burn Run, she just had a connection with Superman regardless and was very faithful to him as a person, right? So they're going out on a story. Lois is kind of has this heavy weight on her. And then they go to this building. Now, it's not like the old stories where Superman would go in flying. And this is one of the, I guess another bit to go to is when Byrne first came into New York City and he said he never had a bagel. Marv Wolfman and Lean Wen took him out to eat. So he was just an amateur, had no comics under his belt, and they went and brought him to New York to a deli to get a bagel. So he's having a bagel, and they said, "Hey, so tell us what stories you want to do." And he said, "You guys have some stories you want to do?" And he said, "Well, I want to do a story where Superman's walking down and they stopped him." He said, "No, Superman has to start flying. Every story he comes in, you see him flying in." So Marv would be taking a different approach than doing that, right? So we got through this stuff. Superman doesn't, the older books, he would already hear the danger and he would go to where it was at. Yes, he dries up on it and lets the story unfold, right? But he can tell there's some people stuck in there and he's trying to follow the tracks, but it basically has no tracks, right? So then we see another building, right? And this one, I think he hears the explosion, right? No, he doesn't hear the explosion yet, right? So they go in, trying to go for this story, and we meet Emil Hamilton. And if anyone, a long time post-crisis reader, he is a mainstay in the book, but this is his first appearance. So we've got a lot of characters that we've been introduced to in this series. And we set up, he's working with magnetics, and then he puts Clark Kent in there, and he can't get out of it. So he said, this sort of shield helped save people. And look, it'll protect you from bullets and whatnot. This magnetic shield. Superman can't bust through it. He feels wimpy right now, right? But he hears something, but he doesn't hear the tank. Because he's trying to show you how complex the tank is. He hears the helicopters. He goes after that, immediately out there. And this, when I first saw it, I was just like, I was wowed by this, but I wasn't wowed by the fight. So we have to do it differently. The way, and this is going to get silly, I'm sorry to do, but since Marv Wolfman is the Fleischer Superman thing, you have to look at it like this. So you have the music going at the same time. And I don't think there was enough sort of synergy between the two. I know that Marv Wolfman, and I know that the Jerry Ordway was kind of being celebrated in the office. They were, I think I met possibly Andy Helfler. I'm not sure if it was Mike Machlan, but they liked his Superman more than they liked Byrne, even though it's like, that's what Ordway was saying. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure Marv Wolfman kind of wanted that Fleischer thing, so where he would struggle and then he would win. But then he was like, no, we get to do even more struggling. So he's fighting this tank or caterpillar or whatever it is, and he's tossing Superman around. So I would rather you keep in your head the Fleischer music while you're listening to this. I don't want to get copyright stricken, so it's kind of the dun da 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 da. Sorry, it's getting too silly. I can't do it. Right? So we have this sort of collective in here fighting it. So Superman's, they also able to show you that they can destroy a building. And Superman's caught on this building and he's struggling to lift this stuff up. Right? And when we see him here, it looks like barely nothing, right? But he said, but while he's lifting, stuff should fall off because it can't stand on its own weight. So this is what he's doing. So we have kind of him at the bottom underneath this thing, underneath the weight, right? But it's kind of wimpy. So that's why I say you have to sing this, you have to kind of hum this to kind of feel that energy that he's trying to get in this. Because it's kind of not as dynamic. And then when Superman gets kind of rolled over by the caterpillar tank thing, and they're saying it got Superman and they think he's dead, it's kind of like, all right, wait a second. So you got to think Fleischer Superman where he would get hit. Actually, Fleischer Superman's he would still find a way to win. This one he got toppled over, right? So Lois is going to do her own thing, right? To see her, her mother, Perry wants her. And then we have this escort that forces Lois in the car. So she's like, you know what? I'm going with it because now that I've been accosted and kidnapped, I can put Luthor on this. I can get him in jail. So Superman gets out. He's only his cape is kind of a mess. I thought he was a goner. He helps save someone, and then he's off to the races, right? So he's trying to get a beat, but he can't. He's having a hard time following these guys, right? So he goes to the police and he gets a notice from the police that they're out there again. So he goes out there. So it's not, his hearing isn't the cure-all, and you can't hear everything, which is already eliminating his power. So which is decent, because you can't just say, oh, I hear something outside, I'm going to go here and do this, right? And as he tries to escape, he gets attacked by other pieces. The pieces he fought before. And we had this sequence where Lois is here, and this is old school. Storytelling, right? You got this Concorde jet, and then she's at the location. It's kind of the biggest jump, but he was running out of pages. I think he could have kind of done this a little better. But the art that Jerry Ordway does in here, is impeccable. But we start here. This is, I think, just face shifts. He doesn't keep this face, but it looks great. Oh, no, it's on the plane. Good Lord. So I'm wrong. She gets on the plane. It's not clear. And see, on the plane, this is crazy. So I've never been on a plane that's like an Airbus, right? So there's some spacious sort of ceiling thing, but they're obviously on this plane, right? So it wasn't clear to me, but I've never been on a Conquest. He probably looked it up, so I'm probably wrong. So let's move on, right? It's a great Luthor page, possibly the best that he did in the series. There's another one that he did later with Byrne, which was a Millennium tie-in, which is a great issue, right? And he's telling them, you know what? I found out that it was one of my factories that, hurt your mother, and she got messed up with the chemicals. And I actually went in, and I, hadn't worked on stuff in a long time. I went and helped and worked with the scientists. We came up with a cure. You just have, you say yes and you can have it. So, but what do you expect me to marry you? It's like, no, just to know that I care for you, right? And she's like, with no other thing to do, she accepts. Now, this bit is just to show you what type of person Luthor is, because it wasn't played up after this. I don't think there was much interaction between Lois and Luthor after this point, right? So Superman's like, hey, he's not sure if it's created by Luthor or what, but it's killed and he has to stop it. But then it comes together like a transformer, like the Constructicons or something like that. And she goes back, and then he has another girl with her and says she's already lost, right? And she'll slowly give in to his helping hand. So he's victorious, right? And this can be continued. Superman's in trouble. And to my surprise, that's what I'm saying. Think the Fleischer cartoons and the struggle to win, even though he would win at the end. This is trying to show he's like way weaker than the Byrne one. So, but it's Marv. Marv is like, royalty. So you kind of don't look at it and say, hey, well, I did. I kind of looked at it and said, why isn't he following what's going on in this? This is he's supposed to be, he can, he's been able to lift the mountain, He's been able to survive in space, without a mask on for long periods. Yeah, he was in bad shape during those periods, but he didn't die. So, I would say, I don't know. But you could see he was kind of given a free hand here, right? It wasn't like, hey, this isn't tough. All right, so we have Professor Hamilton. This is a story kind of told from his perspective, right? And he's telling the story. And that's the thing. When you see something like this and people complain about dialogue, it just depends on who's writing it. Because most regular writers, nobody even cares. They just go to the artist writers and say, let's open this up. Too much dialogue. Well, it's way less than this one. But no, it's his face. It's like, why not have him tell the story, right? This is the only thing that's here. If he just says hi, you go to this, right? So he is telling this story, and in this story, he meets up with Luthor, and Luthor says, I own everything. You work with me for, a couple weeks, now I own everything. That's in my contract, right? And see the face change a little bit. It's close, but a little heavier maybe. I don't know. It could be wrong, right? So he's saying you can get like $7,500 from us as your severance for a little bit of time. So he's trying to get rid of this stuff, and they come and destroy everything he has. So he's a mess, right? They beat him up, goes to the police, and he can't get any help. Can't get anything from the Department of Defense. But then he gets a benefactor come in and say they will back his whole play. So he puts together his magnetic thing. He does the test he did with Clark Kent. He shoots at the guy. It works, but then he's putting fire at it. Oh, no, electrical. Say fire and electrical. Even bacteria, this magnetic shield protects from it. Right? But something goes wrong because somebody cut the wires, and that guy's dead. And he's like, nope, I'm taking my stuff with me. So he's running out, right? This is key. This is the tough. But I did run. I was so afraid they'd take my invention from me, so I couldn't stay there. So I ran, and oh Lord, all I ever wanted was for people to know what I had built. I know what happened next. You know what happened next, don't you? There were those terrorist attacks throughout the city. A manner of mechanical monster gets loose on the killing spree. Terrorists, they said on the TV said, terrorists condemning America. The Superman appeared, and he was going to try to stop them. But I knew he couldn't. I knew he needed help. And that was crazy. He needed help even as I needed to prove the validity of my claims. And here was my chance, right? So Superman's here. He's at this movie theater. He's fighting this Transformer thing. And they shoot the thing. And so you can, once again, try to keep the music in your head. So it's like you're not just worried about Superman saying he shouldn't be able to be taking this hard beating from this tank or caterpillar or whatever it is, right? So he's taking out those weapons, but then they have other weapons that they can use. They got missiles to follow him. He doesn't want the explosion to happen in the city, but it's sticking to him out that. He doesn't think he can outrace it, but he has it hit the tank, right? So the tank is getting some hit. Right? So as Superman is fighting it, and he gains some ground, he's stuck in this field with the thing. Because Professor Hamilton is showing you how well his magnetic thing, he can keep Superman in there. Superman's still catching some beats. There's a concussion blast. They got him in there. They throw something at it. He busts in. So he didn't really need that. They're like, nope, you're not taking us prisoners. And it's a suicide pact, right? What we see and what we hear about these terrorists, right? So Superman gets out of there. Can't tell if Luthor's at the bottom of it. But Superman gets all the credit, and the professor gets none. Right? This is like a good Joe Shuster type of panel here, and he gets no press. So he's like, you know what? You can call out Superman to prove that his thing works. Right? Even though clearly Superman didn't need any help. Right? So he pulls up this hottie, and he got a gun to her head. Superman comes and deals with his claims instead of using super speed to take everything out. And instead of just asking Superman to do a demo, right? So Superman is taking all of these tricks. Now this is what we saw in the Superman movie, right? But Superman is able to do, and the magnetic shield is able to stop the heat vision for some reason. Superman won't be stopped. It looks kind of like a zombie here, right? Then some wacky stuff that shouldn't phase Superman at all. But he uses heat vision. He busts out. My science is stronger than you. No. Hamilton goes crazy. They got this bomb that's going to go off. Superman takes the brunt of it. Then he falls out and says, help, Superman. And he realizes that his science just beat Superman, and it's all in Luthor's lap. Right? So as a kid, I was like, I don't know about this. But if you were doing as I say, there's other points in here, but ultimately they really were trying to show Superman more than Byrne was, that he was like Byrne. Like this one, he's struggling, but I mean, it's kryptonite. He's supposed to struggle with that, right? And this, Superman being mad with power, there's not much you can do with him, right? So, I don't know. I expected a lot of things because I read the Titans, and it was kind of didn't hit the mark. You know, there was some good points in there, some nice characterization between Clark and Kat. There's a lot of good long storytelling in there between them. They go away on a little vacation, but Clark Kent kind of deads it for some reason when he could always break up at some point later. And I said there's a fight that happens that's pretty okay, done by Ordway. But the series doesn't really get good till 436 when Burns starts to plot it, and he writing it, and he immediately gives Jerry Ordway co-plotting credit, and they bring Professor Hamilton back, and things start rolling. So even though Marv wasn't asked to join back, I mean, this is say he's getting the creative credit on Luthor when, like, there's so much of the Byrne run that was redesigned. Shouldn't Byrne get money for the redesign of Jor-El? But for some reason, that was a hint that there was a thing saying that Wolfman was getting money for his redesign of Luthor, and I think at some point they stopped, but I don't know if they brought that up in the court trial. But anyway, so he didn't go away empty-handed. Ultimately, there's a Superman cartoon that came out, and for some reason, anything I guess licensed went back to the old school Superman, and it was a Clark Kent that was a mild-mannered, kind of bumbling kind of person that was a joke, as I guess Tarantino kind of described, that he was kind of, oh, come on, Clark. Not the Clark that was in the movies. The Clark that was in the movies had his bumbling aspects, but he was respected by Jimmy. You know, he was loved by Lana. You know, Perry didn't treat him any worse. So it was just like, the movie one is fine, but Marv, I don't know if it was Marv's fault, but he was involved, so he got to do animation. So he didn't leave empty-handed. So he was still DC's guy, even though the Superman, of course, regretfully, Marv says he had a 10-year writer's block, but he was working the entire 10 years. But anyway, I guess that's it. It's gorgeous art. There's some alright stuff story-wise. I don't think it holds up. I don't know. I've only seen some of the stuff he did before that with Gil Kane and what's the name? And even that stuff, I think if they kind of had someone to help to kind of what Marvel did with Gil Kane, where they got John Romita Jr. on that, get a strong inker on his work, I think they would have cleaned up. But you know, Marv's still one of the top guys, top talents, and you know, check it out. It's still interesting, and interesting to read it in comparison to what was happening in the Byrne run, right? Because on the Byrne run, he's able to carry a space plane. In the Wolfman thing, he struggles trying to get a plane down to Earth, right? And I think that sequence was kind of used for the movie, but in the end, in the movie, he basically has able to stop the plane and put it down, right? So I guess that's it. Spin a rack out.